Come on, Cadden, you've got this, buddy. Travis Alder's voice rang out louder than anyone else's across the soccer field, drawing more than a few glances from the bleachers. He didn't care. His 7-year-old son had just broken past the midfield line with the ball, a little whirlwind of energy and determination. Travis stood up, cupped his hands, and shouted again. "Let's go, number 12." A few parents chuckled, some rolled their eyes. But one woman, sitting alone 3 seats down, didn't move. Her eyes stayed on him. Holland Reyes was supposed to be on her way to a board meeting. Instead, she was sitting in 3-inch heels on a plastic bleacher bench, watching a bunch of 7-year-olds chase a soccer ball like puppies. Her friend's kid was on the same team as someone named Cadden, apparently. She'd promised to swing by for 10 minutes. That was 40 minutes ago. And now she couldn't take her eyes off the man shouting like his life depended on it. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with messy dark hair and a scruffy jaw. His jeans were worn, his flannel shirt had a tear on the sleeve, and his boots looked like they'd been through a few things. But when he smiled when his son scored, and he threw both arms in the air like they'd just won the World Cup, Holland felt something shift in her chest. "That's my boy," he bellowed, laughing, clapping, full of pride. She blinked. That was unexpected. After the game, as the kids ran to the sidelines and parents gathered around with juice boxes and snacks, Holland stood slowly. She didn't even realize she was still watching him until he crouched down, pulled his son in for a hug, and ruffled his hair. "You were amazing out there," Travis said, his voice softer now. "I'm so proud of you." Cadden beamed. "Did you see my goal?" "I saw every second of it." Holland turned to leave. She had meetings to get to, emails waiting, a driver already pulling into the lot, but something made her hesitate. Maybe it was the way the man tugged his son's backpack over his own shoulder without a second thought, or how tired his eyes looked, despite the smile. Or maybe it was how her chest hadn't stopped fluttering since he laughed. She shook her head. CEOs didn't crush on random dads at parks. But she walked slower than usual. And when Travis passed her on the way to the parking lot, she caught his eye and gave a polite nod. He smiled polite, a little curious, and kept walking. She stood there for a second too long, watching him walk off with his son. "Who are you, Travis Alder?" The next Saturday, she was back at the field. This time, she didn't pretend it was because her friend's kid was playing. She just showed up early, coffee in hand, sunglasses on, pretending she was just another parent with time to kill. Travis arrived a few minutes later, Cadden running ahead of him in cleats 2 sizes too big. Holland noticed the same flannel shirt from last week. She also noticed the duct tape patch on the strap of Cadden's backpack. She didn't stare much. Midway through the game, Cadden took a tumble and scraped his knee. Travis was already halfway across the field before the coach could even stand. "I'm okay, Dad," Cadden called, but Travis knelt beside him anyway, checking the scrape, brushing dirt off his shorts. Holland's chest ached, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. After the game, she found herself lingering again. This time, Travis noticed. "You've been at both games," he said, offering a smile as he adjusted Cadden's backpack on his shoulder. "Your kid on the team too." She hesitated. "No, just watching someone else's." He raised an eyebrow. Gotcha." There was a pause. "I'm Travis, by the way, that's Cadden." Holland offered her hand. "Holland." He shook it, warm, calloused, real. "Nice to meet you," he said with a small nod. "Well, see you next weekend." She smiled, maybe. But she already knew she'd be there. Over the next few weeks, Holland made it a point to show up. Always early, always with coffee. Sometimes she brought an extra one, not that she'd admit it wasn't originally intended for her assistant. Travis started sitting next to her on the bleachers. They talked about the game, the kids, the weather. He never asked personal questions, never made assumptions. Just talked like it was the most normal thing in the world to sit beside a woman in designer heels while his son ran around in muddy cleats. One Saturday, as the kids ran drills before the game, Travis turned to her. "You work nearby." "Sort of." He looked at her. "What do you do?" She sipped her coffee. "I run a company." He nodded slowly. "Big one." She tilted her head. "Biggish." He grinned. "So you're important." She laughed. "Some people seem to think so." "Well, you don't act like it." "That a compliment?" "Definitely." She liked that. She liked that he didn't know who she was, that he didn't care. And she liked how her heart started racing when he looked at her too long. The next weekend, it rained, but the game wasn't canceled. Parents huddled under umbrellas. The kids played like it was the best day of their lives. Holland showed up anyway, soaked from the waist down, heels sinking into the grass. Travis looked at her and burst out laughing. "You're really committed to these games, huh?" "I'm here for the company." He blinked. "Mine." She smiled. "Yeah." Something shifted then. His smile faltered for just a second. Then he looked down, nodded once, and said quietly, "I'm glad." Later, after the game, he offered her a ride when her driver was late. "My truck's old," he warned, "but the heater works." She hesitated only a second before she climbed in. The inside smelled like pine and something warm, not fancy, but it felt safe. As they sat in traffic, Holland looked over. "You always cheer that loud." He chuckled. "Only when it matters." "It matters every game." "Every moment." She didn't say anything, but she didn't look away either. Something real was happening. And neither of them knew how fast it was about to change. The first time Travis saw Holland outside the soccer field, he nearly dropped the tray of coffees in his hand. She was standing in front of the bakery on Fifth Avenue, her coat draped over one arm, phone pressed to her ear, heels tapping impatiently against the sidewalk. It wasn't just that she looked out of place among the early morning crowd, it was the way people moved around her, like she was someone they instinctively made space for. He paused mid-step. She hadn't noticed him yet. He could turn around, pretend he hadn't seen her. But instead, he shifted the tray to one hand and walked up. "You stalking me now?" he asked, eyes crinkling. Holland lowered the phone, gaze flicking to his face. "You caught me. I've been tracking your caffeine route for weeks." He held out one of the cups. "Hazelnut, right?" She blinked. "How did you?" "You always toss the empty one under the bench. It's got a big H on the sleeve." She took the cup. "That's either very observant or a little concerning." "Let's go with observant." A pause. "You work nearby?" she asked. "Down the block, construction site, we're redoing the hotel entrance." "You're a contractor." "Used to be. Now I do freelance jobs, whatever pays the bills." She sipped from the cup, eyes scanning his face. "You're good at this." "At what?" "Reading people." He shrugged. "Not really. Just pays to notice things when you've got a kid who loses everything that isn't tied to him." She smiled, soft and a little caught off guard. "You always this honest?" "Not always, but with you, yes." That quieted her, not in a bad way, more like she didn't know where to file that kind of straightforwardness. They stood there for another minute before he gestured to the site behind him. "I should get back before someone confuses the blueprint for a menu. You." She nodded toward the black car idling at the curb. "Board meeting." "Sounds thrilling." "About as thrilling as wet drywall, I imagine." He laughed. "Touché." She watched him walk off, the heel of his boot catching slightly on the uneven sidewalk. He didn't look back. That afternoon, she canceled her dinner meeting. The following Saturday, the game was canceled due to field maintenance, but Travis still took Cadden out to the park. Holland showed up anyway. He spotted her near the swings, arms crossed, hair pulled back, this time in jeans and sneakers still crisp, still expensive, but less like armor. "You came even when there wasn't a game?" he asked, lifting Cadden onto the monkey bars. "I had the morning free, and I figured owed you a coffee." He watched her set a cup on the bench beside him. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." Cadden dropped down next to them, cheeks flushed. "Can we get ice cream?" "It's 9 in the morning, Travis said. "So?" Travis raised an eyebrow at Holland. "What do you think?" "I think you're outnumbered." They ended up at a cafe that served waffles and gelato. Cadden ordered both. Travis tried to insist on eggs, gave up halfway, and just let the kid enjoy himself. Holland, meanwhile, asked questions, not the polite kind, real ones. "What was the hardest job you ever had?" He didn't hesitate. "Framing houses in the winter. Frostbite in your fingers makes holding a hammer feel like torture." "Why'd you keep doing it?" "Because rent was due." She nodded. "That's a good reason." "What about you?" he asked. "Why this city?" "I wanted to build something, not inherit it, not marry into it, just build it." "You did?" "Yes." They didn't talk about what she built. He didn't ask. She didn't offer. Later, as they walked back toward the car, Cadden skipping ahead, Travis slowed. "You don't act like the people I see on the news," he said. "What kind of people is that?" "The ones who wear suits like armor and talk like they're being recorded." She laughed. "I've been one of those people, but I don't think I want to be." He looked at her for a long moment, then don't be. The simplicity of it made her heart twist. That night, she lay in bed and reread the notes for Monday's acquisition. Nothing in them made her feel the way a morning in the park had. The next week, Travis didn't show up to the field. Neither did Cadden. Holland waited through the warm-up, through the first half, through the final whistle. Nothing. After the game, she asked one of the other parents if they'd heard anything. "His kid's sick, I think. He said something about the flu." She nodded, heart sinking in a way she didn't understand. That night, she called in a favor. Not to pry, she told herself just to make sure they were okay. The address came back faster than she expected. A 2-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop on the east end of town. Rent controlled, utilities not included. She stared at the screen. The next morning, she drove there herself. The building was older, red brick faded to brown, with a rusting fire escape and windows that hadn't seen new paint in years. She hesitated only a moment before climbing the stairs. Travis answered the door shirtless, a towel over his shoulder, hair damp. "Holland, I brought soup." He stared at her stunned. "Why?" "Because someone told me Cadden wasn't feeling great." He stepped back to let her in. The apartment was clean but small, lived in. There were Legos under the couch, a dinosaur poster peeling at the corners, and a stack of overdue bills tucked under a fruit bowl. Cadden lay curled on the couch under a fleece blanket, pale and sniffling. "Hi," he said weakly. She crouched beside him. "Hi, buddy. I brought chicken noodle. Think you can handle that?" He nodded, then sneezed. Travis handed her a tissue. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to." He didn't say anything for a while, just watched her spoon broth into his son's mouth like she'd done it 100 times. When she finally stood, he walked her to the door. "Why are you really here?" he asked. I told you. No, I mean really. She looked up at him, eyes searching. Because I've spent most of my life around people who only show up when they need something. And you just show up. He stared at her for a beat. Then, for the first time, he reached for her hand. And she let him. Neither of them said anything else. But everything had already been said. You didn't have to come all the way out here, Travis said as he closed the apartment door behind Holland. The hallway light flickered above them, casting long shadows against the peeling wallpaper. I didn't come out of obligation, she replied, setting the grocery bag down on the small kitchen table. You're a good father. Figured someone should check on you for once. He ran a hand through his hair, still damp from a rushed shower. You always carry soup and medicine in your trunk. I planned ahead, just in case. He leaned against the counter, watching her as she pulled out a small container and set it beside a loaf of bread. You planning on fixing us too? I don't think you need fixing. Travis said nothing, but his jaw shifted slightly as he looked away. Then, softer, no one's ever brought soup before. Holland turned, her expression unreadable. Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people. Later that evening, after Cadden had fallen asleep in a tangle of stuffed animals and mismatched blankets, Travis offered her a drink. She followed him out to the small balcony where two worn chairs overlooked a narrow alley. The city buzzed quietly around them, a low thrum of distant cars and unseen conversations. I've been thinking, he said, handing her a glass. This, whatever this is, I didn't expect it. I didn't either. He glanced at her, but it's happening. She took a sip, eyes fixed on the skyline. We're very different people, Travis. You think I don't know that? No, I think you know exactly how different we are, and I think you're waiting for me to wake up and realize it. He let out a breath. Maybe, or maybe I'm afraid you already have. She turned to face him fully. I've worked with men who wear $1,000 suits and speak in circles. Not one of them has ever looked me in the eye and told me the truth the way you do. That's because don't have the luxury of lying. No, she said, it's because you have integrity. He studied her, as if trying to find the catch. I've never had a woman like you in my life. I've never had a man like you in mine. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was heavy with things they didn't know how to say just yet. The next morning brought a shift. Holland had barely stepped into her office when her assistant knocked and entered, looking hesitant. There's a board dinner Thursday night. You're expected to bring someone. I don't do that, Holland replied, setting her briefcase down. I know, but this one's different. The investors are flying in from Zurich. They want to see you. Grounded. Holland tapped her fingers against the desk. Grounded. The assistant cleared her throat. Less unreachable, more relatable. So that evening, after reviewing 3 contracts and sitting through a conference call that ran 40 minutes too long, she texted Travis from the car. The next afternoon, he showed up at her office lobby in a dark gray button-down shirt and slacks that still had a tag tucked behind his collar. He held a paper bag in one hand and wore an uncertain look. I didn't know what tie to pick, he said as she approached. You don't need one. Figured, but I brought you something. He handed her the bag. Inside was a small photo of Cadden holding his soccer trophy, beaming from ear to ear. The frame was handmade popsicle sticks painted in uneven stripes of blue and green. He insisted you have it. Holland's throat tightened. She looked at the picture, then back at Travis. Thank you. Tell him I'm putting this on my desk. The dinner was held in a private hall on the rooftop of a 5-star hotel. Crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, champagne flowing like water. Travis stood beside her, shoulders slightly stiff, but his eyes sharp, scanning the room like he was on unfamiliar ground. "You okay?" she asked quietly as they approached the table. "I feel like I'm about to take a test I didn't study for." "You're not, just be yourself." "Pretty sure myself doesn't belong here." She stopped, hand resting lightly on his arm. "You belong wherever I am." The evening unfolded with practiced elegance. Investors asked questions. Executives laughed at predictable jokes. But every time Holland glanced at Travis, he was watching her not with appraisal, but respect. Not like she was an asset, like she was a person. After dessert, one of the board members leaned over with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "So, Travis, what line of business are you in?" Travis didn't flinch. "Construction, freelance, I work with my hands." The man's brow lifted slightly. "Interesting, quite a contrast." Travis looked at Holland. "That's what makes it work." She smiled at him, and for the first time in the evening, she felt like she could breathe. They left early. She didn't make excuses. She simply stood, took his hand, and led him out into the night, her heels clicking against the marble as they pushed through the revolving doors. Outside, the air was cool and clean. She exhaled. "You hated that," Travis said. "I did. But you stayed. For you." He studied her face. "Why are you really doing this? You could be with anyone." "I don't want anyone. I want someone who listens, who sees past the surface. Someone who doesn't think dinner with investors means more than eating waffles with a 7-year-old. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure." He stepped closer. "You scare me." "Why?" "Because you make me want things I stopped believing I'd ever have." She didn't move away. "Then let's believe in them together." He leaned in, and for the first time, kissed her not with hesitation, but with certainty. The kind that rewrites rules and silences doubt. The city pulsed around them, but in that moment, it belonged to them alone. The knock came right as Travis was finishing packing Cadden's lunch. He opened the door with a dish towel still over his shoulder, expecting the neighbor's son returning a soccer ball. Instead, Holland stood there. She wasn't in heels, not in a blazer or tailored coat, just sneakers, dark jeans, and a soft beige sweatshirt that made her look, not smaller but closer, familiar. Travis moved aside to let her in. "You didn't text." "I didn't want to give you a chance to talk yourself out of seeing me." He arched a brow. "Was it going to?" "I don't know," she said quietly, stepping inside, "but I didn't want to find out." Cadden peeked out from the bedroom, toothbrush still in his mouth. "Hi, Holland." She grinned. "Hi, champ, ready for the big game." He gave her a foamy thumbs up and disappeared again. Travis leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "You okay?" "No," she said, setting her keys on the table. "My board offered me a position in Paris, 6 months, expansion deal. They want me to oversee it directly." Travis's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're considering it." "I was. It's everything I've worked for. Global reach, autonomy, influence. But I haven't stopped thinking about a kid who eats waffles with gelato, and a man who holds the world together with calloused hands and quiet strength." He didn't speak. "I didn't come here to ask you to tell me what to do," she added, her voice tighter now. "I came because I need you to hear this before I figure it out." He waited. "My whole life has been about control, about proving I could build something without help, without shortcuts. But with you, I don't want control. I just want real." Travis took a slow breath. "What does that mean, Holland?" "It means if I go, I need to know if there's something here worth staying for." He stepped forward, closing the space between them, and tilted his head slightly. "I'm not a reason to stay. That has to be your choice." "It is," she said. but I need to know if you'd want me to. He reached for her hand, weaving his fingers through hers. Every day. She looked up at him, eyes sharp, voice steady. Then ask me. He didn't hesitate. Stay. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. Okay. The next weekend, the soccer field buzzed louder than usual. Parents lined the sidelines with fold-out chairs, camera phones ready. It was the last game of the season. Holland stood on the grass near the midfield line, a clipboard in hand. She'd volunteered to organize the end-of-season snack table, something that made the other mothers blink twice when she offered, but she'd insisted. Cadden ran by and waved, his hair sticking up in all directions. Did you bring the cookies? You think I'd forget the cookies, she called after him. Travis joined her a moment later, balancing a box of juice cartons. You know, I think they like you more than they like me now. You're not wrong. He leaned in and whispered, You're still the only person I've ever seen bribe a referee with homemade banana bread. That was strategic encouragement. He grinned and pressed a kiss to her temple. When the game ended, a flurry of cheers erupted. Cadden's team didn't win, but no one seemed to care. There were high fives, messy hugs, and juice boxes flying in every direction. Speech, someone shouted. Travis stepped onto the small bench and raised his hands. All right, I'll keep it short, but I want to say something. The chatter quieted. I've been standing on these sidelines every Saturday for 3 years. Some days, I didn't know how I was going to afford cleats or snacks or even the gas to get here. But this field, it's where my boy comes alive. He glanced down at Cadden, who beamed up at him. And this year, something happened, didn't expect. I found more than teammates and coaches. I found someone who reminded me that life doesn't stop just because things get hard, that love doesn't care about bank accounts or job titles. He looked directly at Holland. I never thought I'd find someone like her, and I definitely didn't think I'd find her at a soccer field. She stood frozen, her heart thudding. Travis stepped down, walked straight to her, and took her hand. Some people spend their lives chasing the next big thing, but I'm standing next to mine. The crowd erupted in quiet gasps and applause. Later that evening, back at the apartment, Cadden sat cross-legged on the couch, surrounded by the remnants of a post-game cupcake demolition. Travis and Holland stood in the kitchen, the last light of day casting soft gold over the counter. He turned to her, wiping his hands on a towel. You're really not going? No, she said. The board was furious. I think they expected me to chase the title. And you didn't. I've already built something. I don't need to leave to prove, can do it again. He stepped closer. So what now? She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded envelope. I bought the building. He blinked. What building? This one, the landlord was going to sell to a developer. I made an offer. It's yours now. You'll never have to move again. Travis stared at her, stunned. You bought my apartment building. I didn't buy it for you, she said. I bought it with you in mind. He didn't speak for a long moment, then his voice dropped. You love me. I do. You're not afraid of what comes with that. I've handled billion-dollar deals in 3 continents. I think can handle laundry on the fire escape and a 7-year-old with a dinosaur obsession. He laughed, pulled her close, and kissed her deep and slow. I love you too, he said. Cadden peeked around the corner. Are you getting married now? They both turned. Travis looked at Holland, a glint in his eye. You in a hurry? She grinned. Not yet. But someday. She nodded. Definitely someday. And as the city lights flickered on outside, and laughter drifted through the thin apartment walls, Holland Reyes, CEO, investor, and strategist, held the hand of the man who had taught her how to love without spreadsheets or guarantees. And for the first time in her life, she didn't need a 5-year plan. She already had everything she wanted. Travis stood outside the new storefront, the keys cold in his palm, the morning sunlight warming the back of his neck. The sign above the door wasn't fancy, just simple block letters carved into reclaimed wood: Alder and Son, custom woodcraft. He hadn't planned to open a business. Not this soon, not like this. But Holland hadn't just handed him the deed to his apartment building, she'd given him the time and space to imagine more. And when she'd asked, just once, "What would you build if nothing stood in your way?" he'd answered without thinking. Furniture, real stuff, pieces people keep forever. So she'd cleared the path. Not by funding it, though she'd offered, but by introducing him to a friend who owned a shuttered corner shop in a walkable neighborhood, who'd been looking for someone to lease it and bring it back to life. Travis had taken one look at the exposed beams and high windows and said yes. Inside, the scent of freshly sanded oak filled the air. Workbenches lined the walls, and in the back, a small room had been converted into a design space where Cadden's latest sketches, a bookshelf shaped like a dragon, were pinned with pride. Holland walked in carrying 2 coffees and a brown paper bag. "You opened on time," she said, handing him the cup. He took it, still a little stunned. "I didn't think I would." "You always do what you say you're going to." He pulled her in by the waist, pressing a kiss to her cheek. "Only when you're watching." "I'm always watching." They stood like that for a moment, quiet, until the front door opened and Cadden burst in, backpack bouncing. "Did anyone buy the tree table yet?" he asked, dropping his things by the counter. "Because," told Mrs. Lynn next door, she could come see it today. Travis ruffled his hair. "Still here, but you might have just made your first commission." Cadden lit up and disappeared into the back to polish the table again. Holland watched him go, her arms still looped around Travis's waist. "He's grown so much." "He's steadier." "So are you." Travis looked down at her, voice low. "You're the reason we both got room to grow." She rested her head against his chest. "And you're the reason I finally stopped running." Later that afternoon, they walked hand in hand past the bakery on the corner where Holland had once stood with her phone, a world away from everything she now held close. They stopped at the florist's, where the owner greeted them by name and picked out a bouquet of pale orange ranunculus, Cadden's choice for the shop flower. Travis had built a wooden box for them out front. As they walked back, Holland slid her hand into his back pocket. "You know what I never told you," she said. "What?" "I used to think love had to be earned by outworking everyone else. I thought it only came after you'd proven yourself beyond question." He glanced at her, and now I know love's not a prize, it's a place, and I'm already home." He stopped walking, pulling her to a halt. "Say that again." She looked up at him. "I'm home." He kissed her, right there on the sidewalk, in full view of the flower shop, the bakery, and 2 teenagers on skateboards who whistled and whooped as they rolled by. That evening, they hosted a small dinner at the apartment, just close friends, a few neighbors, and Cadden's new best friend from school, whose mother Holland had recently helped land a job interview with one of her partners. The table was a long slab of walnut Travis had sanded and finished himself. He'd surprised her with it 2 weeks ago. "You built this for me?" she'd asked. "I built this for us." Now, as they passed, dishes and laughter filled the space. Holland looked around and felt something she'd never felt before in a boardroom or a luxury suite: wholeness. After dinner, as the guests filtered out and Cadden curled up on the couch with a book, Holland stepped out onto the fire escape. Travis followed, wrapping a blanket around both of them as they leaned against the railing. "You ever miss it?" he asked. "The chaos. The power." She thought about it. Sometimes, but I've learned something. Power without peace is just noise, and I've had enough noise. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his voice rough. You still scare me, in a good way. You don't scare me at all, she whispered. You anchor me. A beat passed. You still want to wait. For what? The someday part. She turned to face him. Are you asking? He stepped back, reached into his back pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box. It wasn't flashy. No platinum, no spotlight, just a simple gold ring with a single, square-cut stone. Timeless. I didn't want to make a show of it, he said, but also didn't want another night to pass without you knowing. I want you, all in, every ordinary, messy, beautiful part of our lives. I want to build something that lasts. With you. Her chest tightened as she took the ring, slipping it on without a word. Then she reached up, grabbed his face in both hands, and kissed him with the kind of certainty that made the whole city blur behind her. I've never said yes so fast in my life, she said when they broke apart. You didn't say it at all, he teased. She laughed, leaning into him. Yes, 1,000 times. They stood there for a long time, until the lights in the building dimmed and the city softened around them. A year later, the wedding was held in the park where it all began. Cadden walked Holland down the aisle, wearing the same number 12 on his boutonniere that he'd worn on his first soccer jersey. The guests sat on handcrafted benches that Travis and his team had built themselves. The reception was simple, filled with good food, music, and stories. Afterward, they returned to the apartment for the night, not to a 5-star suite or a private villa, but to the home they'd built, the life they'd chosen. And in the quiet, long after the laughter faded and Cadden had fallen asleep in his room, Holland lay in Travis's arms and whispered, "This is the best deal I've ever made." He kissed her shoulder, his voice warm against her skin. "This isn't a deal, it's forever." And it was.